I admit, see the rain in the forecast yesterday. I didn't see it there anywhere. And then this morning, as I was getting ready to drive into work, I had a window open next to where I was working on the computer, and this big gust of wind came through, and I said, aha, it's cold too. Something is afoot. Looked at the weather forecast, and we've added some, not a lot, but some rain today. Temperature's only going to be up into the 70s and pretty much the same tomorrow, and then another big warm up coming along. We probably won't get to it today. There is a story out of Pravda on the Potomac, that is the Washington Post, screaming about global warming and how hot it was last year and all the markers indicating that the planet is going to fry to a crisp. I wore shorts to work today. Big mistake, because it's not going to fry to a crisp today, at least not in this part of Idaho. 7 minutes after 8 o'clock, Bill Colley with you, 54. And thank you for... There we go again, that same tickle in the throat. Well, a little rain supposedly clears all of that stuff out of the air, and then all of a sudden you can talk a little bit more smoothly. You're listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com, which means online you can hear us anywhere all over the world, and we hope that you do that when you're out of town. And I have some friends who, they're very warped people, but they listen out of town as well and have been doing so since the show was, since I joined it in the beginning of January. Some of the other things we're going to be talking about today, Randy Staple is joining us probably in, half an hour, just about half an hour. He's going to be talking with us as well. Speaking of heat, it's having an impact on some fishing in the Northwest. And if you're an outdoorsman, we'll fill you in on that a little bit later in the program. But first, I wanted to share with you, off the top of the show, something I happened to see forwarded to me by a friend, and it comes out of a local newspaper, and the website magicvalley.com, which is the electronic version of that very same newspaper. And it's typical, nobody really takes a position much. And fights for just one side when they write newspaper editorials. They like to say, well, a little bit of this, but then again, a little bit of that. I'm not one of those wishy-washy people. The headline, though, is this: Our view, CSI must tread lightly. And the writer is saying that the efforts by the trustees at the College of Southern Idaho, who also oversee the refugee resettlement program here in Twin Falls, that they may be making a big mistake by limiting public input into their meetings, by changing that so they can leave people out who might have a thought or an opinion. In fact, they may be screening people ahead of time so they can remove people that they don't like or that might make a good argument. But I went down through this page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 paragraphs, and I came across this. No doubt, some trustees are growing tired of hearing the cringe-inducing, misguided rants of a few ignorant souls when it comes to the Islamic religion and the process of relocating refugees. We are too. When the premise of your argument is that all Muslims are evil and refugees are hell-bent on destroying America, we're not likely to share much common ground. Well, I admit there might be a person or two who's walked into a meeting over there and had very strong feelings about Islam. But for the most part, since some of the people have actually sent me their testimony that they have either given or prior to them giving that testimony, people are in touch with me as well. Funny thing about that when you work in media, they send me their testimony and some of it's quite logical. And I don't know anybody that is condemning everyone who might be involved in this program. I do know there are concerns, and after we've seen, I saw a long list last week of all of these people who were involved in refugee resettlement programs, the Boston bombers, the kid last week in Chattanooga, and the list goes on and on and on, a guy in Boise, a group in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Where does it end? And I think the argument that people have been making, and I don't even want to hear, but it's a religion of peace. Baloney. I'm sick and tired of that. That's just a qualifier that tries to make you feel better about yourself. You liberals are like wetting your pants in a dark suit. It gives you a warm feeling all over, but let's be honest, nobody really notices, okay? The fact of the matter is, there are people who are coming to these meetings, and they are coming with legitimate concerns. Are there some people who just don't like Islam? Well, I guess if I'd had a son or a daughter or a father or a brother or a sister who'd been killed by some radical Islamist, whether it be in the United States or even overseas, I might not have much what you'd call compassion for any of these people. But that is a small group. That is a small minority. And what they're trying to do at this newspaper is paint all opposition as just being raving either lunatics or bigots, which it isn't. There are a lot of people there who are saying, hey, can we even afford this? I took a drive over the weekend. If you check out our website, there's something I put up there, and it just mentions how fed up people in America are with a particular crisis and situation that we've seen the hollowing out of our economy ever since I got out of high school in 1980. So for 35 years, we've been seeing manufacturing jobs going overseas or south of the border, and yet we keep bringing in more and more of these people to this country from all other parts of the world. I drove into downtown Filer the other day. Do you know how many empty storefronts there are there? Are you telling me that just from the perspective that we're going to bring people here so we can have additional competition for what few opportunities there are? I'm left scratching my head about that one. I don't understand how that works. I mean, how cruel is that? I have a daughter who is in college right now. I'm hopeful that she will find something to do with her life other than go on welfare and food stamps when all is said and done. I saw a video over the weekend. It was at Real Clear Science. And it's a French scientist talking about how religion and governments and all of these things are just, figments of our imaginations, things we created in our own minds so that we can control other people. And then he goes on to say, and now with the rise of machines, we don't really need all of these people out there. We don't really need them. Oh, we're keeping them busy, he says, playing video games and, munching on Doritos. But the time will come when a decision is made that we have to get rid of a number of them because they're a drag on society. That is one of your liberal friends telling you right now that what their real goal happens to be in all of this. Once they can crash the system. When I drive through a little town like that, which I assume, since there are storefronts there, while they are empty, that at one time they were constructed because they were filled, it tells you that things aren't too good around here right now. We can talk about Idaho's low jobless rate, which is around 4%. But it does not excuse the fact that a lot of the jobs people are getting simply aren't paying the bills. And until we figure out a way to do that and maybe improve that situation, why in the Lord's name are we bringing people here in droves? There was a story today that I happened to see at Breitbart. Do you know that 1/5 of the population of El Salvador, I think it's El Salvador, is now living in the United States? 1/5. Where are they all going? Are they working? If they aren't working, who's paying for the freight? Well, I think I know who that is. I think it's the handful of people who are still left working. So this notion that people are opposed to all of this just simply because, we're mean-spirited and we don't like the color of somebody's skin or how they worship what they believe is God, well, that's baloney. That's absolute baloney. And it just shows you the close-mindedness, number one, of the trustees at the College of Southern Idaho, and number two, your typical knee-jerk liberals at your local newspaper. And it doesn't matter. You go anywhere around the country, and just about every newspaper you pick up, it's that same thing. If everyone would just light a candle, the whole world would be brighter. You snuffed out my candle. It's just that persistent liberal whine. And it shows you they have absolutely no understanding of how the economy works, about how Americans work, and what Americans believe, because they don't believe in any of that either. They've given up on all of those traditions. Just look at their op-ed pages when it came to same-sex marriage. Gay, 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 good, 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 good. They are a breed apart from the rest of America. And then they try to sell this and claim, America has changed. Well, I saw the polls last week that say, no, America hasn't changed. America is really nervous about the direction we're going with a lot of these things. And I would subjectively say, with good reason. Once more, you drive down these main streets in these little towns, and these main streets have been hollowed out. And after I wrote that piece, I posted it to Facebook, and I made a comment that perhaps this was the result of the growth of big box stores just 5 miles away in Twin Falls. And you know what? Somebody replied and said, no, that's not the case. That downtown was hollowed out a long time before we had the Walmart and the Costco and the Target. And now you start to put all of this together and you realize how critical this is for the future of the people in this valley. And you cannot allow some lame brain at a newspaper to have any input on this. Now, I grant that nobody really reads newspapers much anymore in this day and age, and I would bet that the circulation on this paper is somewhere, if it ever was above 10,000, it's likely, in the print edition, it's likely well below 10,000 now, if it's that high. And the online edition, I would imagine, I saw a comment. I'll leave that up to the writer who commented about where this paper stands when it comes to papers across the state of Idaho. But it's no different. You will see the same thing on the pages of the Statesman out of Boise and out of the Press Tribune and all of the other papers around the state. It's just this cookie cutter response to all of these things. And whenever I hear these people say, because I used to get this caller who was big on, repeating the talking points he would see in newspaper editorials, and he used to tell me, well, we're not that kind of people. It's like, speak for yourself. Speak for yourself. If you want, when you take a boat out, I grew up on a lake, so I know a little bit about what I'm talking about, and my dad patrolled the lake. And I had a big inboard-outboard engine in a boat and speed around on that, and he used to stand up. He was about 6.5 feet tall, plus with his Stetson on, he looked it looked like a giant coming down the lake. But we were well acquainted with the fact, because a number of our neighbors had pontoon boats, that there was a size limit. And at a certain point, you could pull up to a dock and say, well, join us. We're having a party. If it makes you feel better, get on board. Well, you do that about 30 times, the boat sinks. And if you're out in the middle of the lake when that happens, it's really unfortunate. That's the analogy I'm making to what's going on in this country right now. And yes, I do actually fear the Muslims and I'm concerned, as one of our guests told us the other day, because they'll claim, well, we're just all reacting in fear. Although if someone wants to come by and shoot up my neighborhood, I might be a little fearful about that. That's true. I'll just say I'm concerned about that. And after what we saw happen in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and in Boston, and in Minneapolis, and in Boise, we could name dozens of other communities. I've got people who are sending me these lists all the time. I am sick to death of these effete liberal elites who, by the way, their anger with the world is really because back when they were in high school, and they've never gotten over it, they got pushed into a few lockers and shoved into lockers, inside lockers, and closed in by the football captain. And they're still upset about that, and they feel that social justice means getting some revenge, and this is their way to get revenge. Because, of course, they were always so much smarter than everybody else. It's time now that they told the rest of us how we have to live. 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. 54. Overnight, going into tomorrow, it's supposed to be down into the mid-40s. That means, of course, we'll postpone global warming for at least a day in the neighborhood. I've got plenty more coming up. Randy Staples will be joining us about 8:40 this morning, talking a little bit about some job growth in Idaho, the lack thereof, or perhaps some job growth. You want some actual evidence of someone who knows what they're talking about. Tonight, speaking of Filer, Pastor Sharam Hadian is going to be giving a presentation there at 7 o'clock at the Canyon View Baptist Church. That's on Yakima Avenue, 700 Yakima Avenue. Easy to find. You just turn off Route 30 and head into town. But he's giving a presentation there. Now, this is a guy who actually, he knows what Islamic fundamentalism is and what the radicalism is, because he was a little boy living in Iran when the Shah was overthrown and the Mad Mullahs took over the country, and his family had to flee for their lives. And then later he converted to Christianity because he saw holes in his own faith. Now, take his word for it. I mean, he's been there. He might actually have a little bit more experience than some guy working at the local newspaper who just, he was picking his nose in his college classes 6 months ago and lived in the mom and dad hotel up to a year ago. This pastor might have a little bit more in-depth of a look at this. Maybe more of an experience. They like to talk about the experience of the situation. Well, I think that he perhaps has some obvious things he could shed about all of this, and he will, speaking again tonight in Filer, and again at Canyon View Baptist Church, 700 Yakima Avenue. Tomorrow he's giving us not the same presentation. There might be some similarities, but he's giving a presentation tomorrow, and that'll be the East Side Baptist on Eastland Drive in Twin Falls. That's tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. But I would strongly urge you, if you'd like to know more about this and get a real insight into what's going on, go listen to someone who has actually experienced it and knows the inside details of what's going on. And you know, he's part of a growing movement in this country, and if people don't listen to him, well, that's at their own peril. I also wanted to mention quickly, if I could, coming up Wednesday on our program, on a lighter note, well, unless you have a health issue you want addressed, on a lighter note, Dr. Jonathan Tripp is scheduled to join us in studio. He does this on Wednesday mornings between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. It's usually Dr. Tripp or it's a physician assistant, Russell Singleton. And one or two of them, or both of them, or sometimes a guest will be in studio with us. We'll see that again coming up Wednesday morning. They like to remind people, and they're working on a lot of, we talked about family medicine and just the importance of that last week, that personal care that you get because you're not going through an assembly line office, something akin to an assembly line. And they really have come up with a lot of great ideas on weight loss and skin care too, as well, as the doctor was filling us in last weekend. But we'll be here on Wednesday between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. If you have a question or comment, feel free to give him a call while he's in the studio with us. The main office for Tripp Family Medicine, of course, is across from the main post office on Fillmore Street in Twin Falls. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. You talk a little bit about the challenges of this country. 1/5 of El Salvadorians living here now, in the United States, of all places. And, of course, who knows, maybe half of Guatemala, plus tens of millions of people from Mexico. We don't know, since we simply can't count them. Nobody really has a good handle on those numbers. And all the people who overstay their visas from other countries around the world, many of them Islamic countries, and Africa and other places they're coming in from, in Asia, these people, we don't know. This is all competition, though, for a dwindling American pie. And I cite some of the things I saw over the weekend. Some of you are familiar with David Stockman. He got a lot of attention a few weeks ago when he pegged the real unemployment rate at 42.9% by counting people who no longer are on the rolls. Plus, he was also counting those people who are underemployed. He has a blog that's called David Stockman's ContraCorner.com. I subscribed to it after hearing his comments about unemployment last month. And he's quoting some writer from Zero Hedge. Morgan Stanley says oil downturn has no parallel in recorded history. On Tuesday, the market got another reminder of just how painful the current commodity price environment has been for producers when Chesapeake eliminated its common dividend in order to conserve cash. All right, there's one. Here's another. Business Insider. It's official. Oil is in a bear market. And the writer goes on to say, on Thursday, West Texas intermediate crude oil futures fell more than 1% to settle near $48.55. And he says a bear market, that's per barrel, by the way. A bear market is roughly defined as a 20% drop from highs. Oil has fallen about 20% in just 6 weeks. So there you go. And then I came across this also from David Stockman. U.S. coal industry is collapsing. Well, it could be because the Obama administration has been harassing it with all of its regulations and the like and trying to put it out of business. But you've got to understand, and I was writing about this on our website too as well. If you go to Colley's commentary at our website, or you can see it at News Radio, our News Radio 1310 KLIX Facebook page. If you go to New Zealand, they have a huge dairy industry. It's collapsing. They're dumping milk. Why? Because China, main customer, is slowing down and not buying it. If you go to Singapore, Singapore's economy is contracting. Why? Because China is not buying. If you look at something called met coal, metallurgical coal, which is used in the steel industry, its price has collapsed. Why? Because we're not making steel. The price of copper, which just a few years ago was outrageous, people were stealing it from, farms, and they were stealing it from lampposts and the like. The price of copper has collapsed. All of these, despite what we're being told about growth in China and a jobless rate that's improving in this country, baloney. All of these things are happening because the economy around the world is slowing down, and it's slowing down rapidly. And for some reason, we are still hell-bent on bringing people from all over the world and stuffing them into the United States. Does anybody out there have a clue any longer as to how this should be operating? 8:30, Bill Colley with you. It's top story this Monday morning, with a few rain showers here and there. Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing will join us in about 15 minutes. 54 right now at 8:30. You can reach our program if you're so inclined today. Well, you can't go outside and play in the rain, right? What else are you going to do? Give me a telephone call at 736-0300. 736-0300, or you can reach me by email at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com, spelled Colley. I was talking about the economy a few minutes ago, and the economy simply says we can't keep throwing all of these people here. The argument from Wall Street is, hey, cheap labor, that'll be good, that'll turn things around. Yeah, we've been hearing that for 35 years. I was going to say 30 decades, 35 years, 3.5 decades. Turn the economy around. And I remember in high school, they were telling us, the future is going to be a service economy. They didn't tell us that the service economy was going to pay jack. So here you go. And all this talk, we're just, these disruptions, of course, occur when we have these economic changes. Yeah, I don't think things are getting a whole heck of a lot better in that sense of long-term prospects. I have this from a friend of mine. He was taking a look at some of these price drops in various commodities around the world that are especially used in construction and building and the like. He says if economic recovery had taken place since the crash, 8 years ago, he says the primary interest rates would have stepped higher in sync with the growth in the economy, and the primary interest rates after 8 years are, zero, and then a holding pattern over the entire period. And the rise, he writes, in home sales and prices is due to foreign buyers who turn around and then lease those homes to Americans. And there are still roughly 30 million unoccupied mortgaged properties in what is known as the shadow inventory. If home sales, he writes, were going so well, how is it that rental rates have sharply risen over the past 4 or 5 years? In a vigorous housing market, rental rates fall. He says, were I a younger man in today's environment, I would be operating a repair shop for everyday items, especially small engines and mid-priced appliances. I think he's making a great point here. There was a fellow from my dad's hometown. I grew up about 15 miles away from there, and he started fixing small gasoline engines, lawnmowers and the like, after he got out of high school. And my uncle once joked, he said, yeah, everybody said he never amounted to anything in school, but now he has this huge business. He just kept expanding and expanding and expanding, and then had more business than he knew what to do with. He had to hire people, and now, he's got a great big outfit. The writer says a Briggs & Stratton 6.5 horsepower quantum engine will cost about $600 to $800 retail. He says 95% of the problems in any small engine are fuel-related. The repair parts for the fuel system for that engine would cost you $5. And he said they take half an hour to install, so you have a repair job that will cost a customer $100. The customer saves $500. You make $80. The writer says people can't continue to consume, but they also have lost their ability to fix even the simplest things. So that's his solution for turning things around for you individually. You've got to be creative in order to get ahead in this type of environment. We have a caller with us. You're on the air on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com with Bill Colley. What's on your mind?
Good morning, Bill. I really appreciate your comments about the CSI board. I mean, the paper supposedly believes in freedom of speech. That's part of our First Amendment, and yet they're muzzling free speech because they don't want to hear the truth. And you really pointed out that this morning. I really appreciate it. But I've never heard anybody, and my friends that are opposed to the refugee program, saying that all Muslims were murderers and so forth. But we have to be aware that if only a small percentage of them, and ISIS has said that they're going to use the refugee program to bring their jihads in, terrorists in here. So what part of that also in today's paper, Iran, death to America, they're the ones that are basically the kingpin for this whole movement around the world. What part of death to America doesn't the Times News and the CSI board of trustees, not understand?
Iran was tweeting out photographs of President Obama committing suicide, Photoshop pictures the other day.
It's crazy. But, the other subject you just mentioned, the EPA has admitted with all these restrictions, cutting down coal-fired plants for generation, is going to have 1/100th of a degree centigrade reduction in. So, in other words, they're destroying our economy on purpose for nothing.
And I thank you for the call because they have not been reading Bjorn Lomborg. That's his name. If you can get a chance, Bjorn Lomborg. Go do a computer search on that guy and see what he says about all the money they intend to spend on these boondoggles to combat climate change, as they call it. And he says we could be doing far better and be doing other things and not paying any attention to this for a lot less. But you see, a lot of people are making big bucks off this climate change hoo-ha. It's 8:39. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Randy Staples from Idaho Weekly Briefing is scheduled to join us in just a few minutes. Speaking of the EPA, the EPA is trying to regulate the coal dust that goes into when we do road repairs. And Randy has a piece about that today at Idaho Weekly Briefing. Perhaps we'll get his thoughts on that. And Congressman Mike Simpson, occasionally doing the right thing, is actually trying to stand up to the EPA on this one. And actually someone may have let the word states' rights slip. Ooh, bad people. Although they are thinking about how they can control costs when it comes to paving roads. Yeah, but they're bad people. We shouldn't be driving. We should be eating granola, using that for our flatulence fuel, and then walking everywhere. Don't you know? 8:39, coming up on 8:40, 54